Let me speak to you with the voice of experience, not as a philosopher, not as just another author, but as a man who, for decades, walked alongside the greatest visionaries of our era, men who built empires out of nothing, who changed the course of history armed with nothing but an idea and a burning desire. Many years ago, when I began my research under the guidance of Andrew Carnegie, I had no idea what was ahead. He gave me a challenge to study in depth the lives of those who had achieved extraordinary success and uncover what made them different. It wasn't an easy task. It took me more than 20 years to interview over 500 individuals, entrepreneurs, inventors, leaders, some famous, others unknown. But from all of them, I learned one single, unshakable truth. So powerful, it became the foundation of everything I teach, and it is this: nothing in life manifests without a burning desire. It's not enough to want something. It's not enough to need it. You must desire it with every fiber of your being, with an intensity that consumes you, that guides you, that becomes the central force of your existence. I saw men with less intelligence than you. I saw men with no resources, no connections, no formal education, but they had something that few possess, an unbreakable decision to attain what they desired. It wasn't a whim, it wasn't a passing thought, it was a flame burning deep in their soul. Let me be clear, most people don't fail because of a lack of opportunity. They fail because they've never wanted something with enough force to pursue it, without conditions, without excuses, without pause. When Edison was trying to create the electric light bulb, he didn't know how to do it. No one had done it before, but he desired it. With every failed attempt, and there were more than 1,000, he didn't see failure. He saw one more step closer. Because his desire was so intense, there was no space for doubt. When Henry Ford was ridiculed for attempting to build an 8-cylinder engine in a single block, his engineers told him it was impossible. Do you know what he said? Produce it until it works. He didn't negotiate with his desire. He held it firm until the world adjusted to him. Now look at yourself. What do you desire? And don't tell me you want a better life or more money. That's too vague. The mind doesn't respond to generalities. It needs direction. It needs precision. It needs absolute clarity. You must define your desire. Give it shape. Measure it. You must see it in your mind as if it already exists, because if you can't see it within, you will never hold it in the physical world. I lived it myself. There was a time in my life when everything seemed to be against me. Poverty surrounded me, doubt weighed me down. But I had a clear purpose: to prove that any human being could design their destiny if they understood the laws of success. And that purpose became my burning desire. Day by day, I nurtured it, I wrote it, I spoke it out loud, I visualized the impact of my words. I clung to the vision even when the path was nowhere in sight. And let me tell you something I discovered in that process. Desire, when sustained by faith, becomes power. An invisible power begins to work in your favor. The right people appear, ideas emerge, doors open. But none of that happens while your desire remains lukewarm. Hear me clearly. The world does not respond to weak desire. It responds to obsessive desire, the kind that does not take no for an answer, the kind that is willing to give everything and wait as long as it takes. Because while others are resting, the man with burning desire is working in silence. While others hesitate, he is planning. While others quit, he keeps walking. But this isn't magic. It's a law, a mental law. And it works the same for everyone. But only if you dare to commit. So I invite you to do this now. Take a moment, find paper and a pen, and write with absolute honesty. What do you desire most in your life? Write it in detail. Don't be vague. Be specific. How much do you want to earn? What do you want to create? Who do you want to serve? Who do you want to become? Then write when you'll achieve it and what you're willing to give in return, because every desire has a price. Maybe it's time, maybe it's discipline, maybe it's leaving comfort behind to embrace the discomfort of growth. And once it's written, read it every morning. Read it before you sleep. Read it out loud, with emotion, with faith. Make it your mantra, your declaration, your covenant with yourself. Do this every day, not once, every single day. Because this is how you begin to transform your mind. This is how you engrave your desire into the subconscious. This is how you make your life begin to move in the direction of your vision. I did it. Others have done it. And so can you. But it starts here. There is no shortcut. Burning desire is the spark that ignites the engine of success. Without it, everything else collapses. So now tell me, are you ready to ignite that fire? Because if you are, then you're ready to receive the next law. And believe me, what comes next is even more powerful. Now that we've ignited the flame of burning desire, it's time to talk to you about the second law. And I want you to take it with the utmost seriousness, because if desire is the spark, then faith is the fuel that keeps that flame alive. Many people think faith is a religious matter, but I won't speak to you from a pulpit. I'll speak from the mental, emotional, and practical experience I lived alongside the most powerful men in the world. The faith I speak of is not blind belief in something external. It is absolute belief in yourself, in your ability to make real what does not yet exist. When I was writing Think and Grow Rich, I came to understand a truth that transformed me forever. Whatever the mind can conceive and believe, the mind can achieve, but only if that belief runs deep, only if that conviction is grounded in faith, because without faith, desire remains a dream, but with faith, desire becomes purpose. I want you to understand something very few do. Faith is not an emotional luxury. It is a mental necessity. It is the only bridge between your thoughts and their realization in the physical world. When I interviewed Henry Ford, I clearly remember how he spoke about his first automotive project. No one believed in him. They ridiculed him. They said horses were more reliable, that no one would ever trust a horseless carriage. But he had faith, not just in the invention, faith in himself, faith that his vision was real even before it became reality. And that is the kind of faith you must develop. Let me put it clearly. Your subconscious mind does not distinguish between what is real and what you imagine with intensity and conviction. That's why, when you repeat an idea with emotion, with firmness, with certainty, that idea becomes a belief. And once it becomes a belief, your mind begins searching for the means to bring it to life. That's why I asked you in the previous part to write down your desire. And now, I want you to read it every single day with faith. Not like someone reading a recipe, but like someone declaring a prophecy. Because every time you do, you are training your mind to believe. You are building the habit of faith. Now, some may say, but I don't have faith. I've failed so many times that it's hard to believe. To them, I say this: faith is not something you have or don't have. Faith is something you build, like a muscle, like a bridge between who you are today and who you are becoming. And to build it, you need three things. Daily repetition of purpose. Take your written desire and read it aloud every morning and every night. Do it with emotion, with your eyes closed, if you can. Imagine yourself living that desire. Feel that it's already part of you. It doesn't matter if you don't fully believe it at first. Repetition is the key. In time, that mental image will become an emotional truth. Elimination of negative language. Your mind cannot move forward if you sabotage it every day with phrases like, I can't, it's too hard, it's impossible, I'm not capable. Every word you speak holds creative or destructive power, and if you let doubt speak louder than faith, your desire slowly dies out. Change your language. Speak like someone already on the path. Say, I'm building my vision. I'm learning every day. I'm moving closer to my goal. You don't have to lie to yourself. You just have to affirm yourself. Surround yourself with external faith when yours is weak. There will be days when your inner faith feels weak. I lived it. Believe me. There were days I didn't know if I could keep writing. Nights when I wondered if the world would ever hear my words. But then I'd remember my conversations with Carnegie. I'd remember Edison's stories. I'd remember I wasn't the first to walk through uncertainty. That's why I tell you, surround yourself with people, books, teachings, and environments that nourish your faith. Turn off the voices that weaken you. Seek out those that strengthen you. Now listen, passive faith is not enough. It's not enough to believe and sit back waiting. What makes the difference is what I call applied faith. Applied faith is faith that acts. Faith that gets up even when there are no results. Faith that calls, that searches, that asks, that learns, that does what it can from where it is, with what it has, today. Even without seeing the whole path, it walks, because it believes that every step brings it closer. I once wrote, faith is the eternal elixir which gives life, power, and action to the impulse of thought. And today I say, if you combine burning desire with living, active, applied faith, nothing can stop you. Others will call it luck. You will know it is cause and effect. It is law. It is your mind, your spirit, and your decision aligned with a vision so clear, the entire universe has no choice but to cooperate. So here's your assignment for this second law. Read your desire twice a day. Visualize it as if it's already real. Repeat power affirmations, not words of doubt. Act with faith every day, even if it's a small step. Surround yourself with beliefs that fuel your fire. Do this for the next 30 days, and your life will not be the same. Believe me, I've seen it time and time again. The world doesn't respond to the smartest or the strongest. It responds to those who believe. To those who see themselves winning before they ever touch the trophy, and you can be one of them, if you choose to believe, not halfway, not only when it's convenient, but every day, every minute, with all your soul. Do it. Because faith will never fail you, if you never fail it. Now listen carefully. We've talked about burning desire as the spark, about faith as the fuel. But what good is having a blazing vision if you don't even know where you stand on the path? Let me say this with absolute clarity. The greatest enemy of success is not the lack of desire, not even the lack of faith. It is the lack of self-knowledge. It's not knowing exactly who you are, what you're missing, how you're sabotaging yourself, and what skills you need to acquire to get where you say you want to go. Let me be blunt, just as I learned by observing the greats. No one achieves lasting success without first knowing themselves with brutal honesty. When I began interviewing men like Charles M. Schwab, Thomas Edison, Woodrow Wilson, and even Andrew Carnegie himself, I noticed an unmistakable pattern. Each of them had a rigorous method of self-evaluation. They didn't get carried away by the illusion of who they wanted to be. They faced, every single day, the truth of who they were. They were not afraid to say, "Here I am weak. Here I need to improve. This habit is destroying me." And that brings me to the third law I want to teach you today. If you don't know yourself with precision, you will never be able to lead yourself effectively. So, how do you build that precision? Let me guide you through a process I designed myself, a method I call conscious self-diagnosis. Don't take this lightly. This process can open your eyes or shatter your excuses. Maybe both, but if you do it with sincerity, it will be the first step toward irreversible transformation. Step 1. Evaluate your current situation with brutal honesty. Ask yourself right now, am I moving toward my purpose or just surviving? What habits are pulling me away from my vision? Where does most of my daily time go? What am I afraid of and why? What are my real skills? And which ones do I just think I have? Write it all down, not in your mind. Don't leave it as vague thoughts. Write it down, because the mind lies. Paper doesn't. What isn't measured can't be improved, and if you don't know exactly where you are, you'll never know what the next step should be. Step 2. Identify the areas where you need to educate yourself. Now ask yourself, what do I need to learn to reach my goal? What skills do I need to develop? Leadership, sales, communication, organization, mental discipline. What knowledge am I lacking that is costing me money, time, or energy? Let me be direct. No one I've ever met, not one of the millionaires I studied, left their education in the hands of the system. All of them, every single one, were self-taught. They read more than others. They asked more questions. They took notes. They educated themselves in silence while the world was asleep. Did you know Carnegie read for hours every day before turning 30? That Henry Ford had a team of advisors who curated books, essays, and articles for him to study each week? That Edison spent entire nights in his lab, not just experimenting, but learning from every failure as if it were a university lesson. And you? What are you educating yourself in right now? Let me be clear. Your growth is not the responsibility of the school system. It is your responsibility, your mission, your obligation. And I'm not talking about degrees, diplomas, or certifications. I'm talking about practical wisdom. Reading with intention, listening with attention, practicing with purpose. That's why I give you this instruction. Set aside 1 hour a day, just 1 hour, and make it your sacred time for self-education. Read a book that uplifts you. Watch a lecture that challenges you. Study a skill you need. Do it every day, no exceptions. Because consistent knowledge is the only path to consistent growth. Step 3. Build your personal development plan. This isn't about reading for the sake of reading. It's about having a plan. A roadmap that tells you, what do I need to master this month? What habit do I want to eliminate in the next 90 days? What new skill am I committing to this year? Don't leave it to chance. Don't improvise. Write your plan. Update it every week. Track your progress. Adjust when needed. Your success will largely depend on your ability to steer your own education with the same discipline a captain uses to steer a ship. And I'll promise you this, 1 year of focused self-education will put you ahead of 95% of the world. Not because you're better, but because most people stop after school. They stop learning. They stop growing. They replay the same song until it fades out. But not you. You have a burning desire. You're cultivating active faith. And now you're shaping your mind into the fertile ground where your greatness will be born. So do this for yourself. Evaluate yourself with brutal honesty. Identify your weaknesses without judging yourself. Create a focused growth plan. Execute it daily with discipline. Review and adjust it continuously, because you're not here to repeat your past. You're here to redesign your future. And that future begins the day you choose to know yourself, educate yourself, and outgrow yourself on purpose. The law of relentless motion. Move, even without guarantees. I've learned throughout my life that no genius, no extraordinary talent can surpass a man or woman who has made the decision to move every single day with determination toward their goal. And I say every single day with intention, because most people only move when they feel inspired. But those who are truly successful have learned to take action even when everything inside them says no. That was one of the secrets Andrew Carnegie shared with me during our very first conversation. Son, Ideas are worthless unless they're in the hands of someone willing to act, even when they're exhausted, even when they don't know how, even when they're shaking with fear. From that moment on, I understood something that would mark me for life. Persistence is more powerful than any storm. You don't need to know every step. You don't need the certainty of success before you begin. You just need to move, because the universe doesn't respond to the dreamer. It responds to the doer. When I began interviewing the most powerful men in the world, I discovered that none of them saw themselves as extraordinary. What set them apart was their daily commitment to motion. They didn't overthink. They didn't wait for others' approval. They didn't need perfect conditions. They simply acted. One of them told me with brutal honesty, "Success came to me because I decided not to stop, even when I wasn't seeing results." And that's when I identified this law. Relentless motion, applied with focus, builds momentum. And momentum conquers doubt, confusion, and fear. This is a truth that isn't taught in schools, but should be written on the walls of every home. Nothing happens until you move. It doesn't matter how clear your goal is or how deeply you desire it. Without action, the vision dies. And I'm not talking about random action. I'm talking about conscious, disciplined, persistent action. The kind you choose even when no one is watching. The kind you take when you're tired. But you remember why you started. There's a pattern I discovered while studying success. Those who triumph don't do extraordinary things once. They do simple things many times until they become unstoppable. You can do it too. Start today. Make that difficult call. Write that letter. Record that video. Submit that proposal. But don't do it just once. Do it until your progress becomes a habit. Do it until your mind understands that you're not giving up anymore. I remember Thomas Edison once told me something I've never forgotten. The world doesn't reward the one who tries. It rewards the one who insists. And at that moment, I got it. Most people don't fail because of a lack of ideas. They fail because they quit before the reward arrives. Unstoppable motion is the bridge between your vision and its realization. It's the force that over time convinces the world that you mean business. That's why every day you must do at least one thing that brings you closer to your goal. It doesn't matter if it's big or small. It doesn't matter if you see immediate results or not. What matters is that you keep moving, because the secret isn't in running fast. The secret is in not stopping. I've seen average men surpass geniuses simply because they refuse to quit. I've seen impossible dreams become reality because someone refused to stop marching forward. I've seen the invisible become manifest because an ordinary person chose to move every day, without permission, without guarantees, without excuses. Now I speak to you from the depth of my experience. You have that power too. You don't need to do it perfectly. You don't need to do it like others. You just need to do it every day. Even if it's hard, even if no one applauds you, even if it feels like you're moving slowly, because success doesn't arrive all at once. It comes like a tide that rises with each firm step. It comes as the result of motion that never stops. And when that day comes, when you look back and see how far you've come, you won't attribute it to talent. You'll attribute it to your consistency, to your determination, and to the daily decision to move, while others were just thinking. That is the fifth law. And if you apply it with intention, all the others will begin to align. The law of creative resistance, turning the blow into fire. I've spent years observing a truth that many are afraid to admit. Success and resistance walk hand in hand. Where there is a great vision, there will be great opposition. And the bigger your dream, the stronger the force that rises to stop you. I'm not only talking about external enemies. I'm talking about your doubts, your failures, your fears. I'm talking about the obstacles that seem sent to break you, but here's the secret I discovered at the very heart of success. Resistance is not your enemy. It is your training. It is your refining fire. It is your sacred test. Let me share something personal. For years, I was ignored, dismissed, even ridiculed by men who didn't understand my purpose. Many called me crazy for dedicating my life to studying the human mind and its invisible power. More than once, I felt defeated, but every time I wanted to give up, something inside me whispered, "This isn't happening to stop you. It's happening to prepare you." And so I stood up again. I wrote again. I asked questions again. I moved forward again. Over time, I understood that each blow had been a lesson, each rejection, a refinement, each fall, a calibration. This is the sixth law I share with you. Resistance, properly interpreted, becomes creative energy, but you must see it with new eyes. Because most people see resistance as a sign that something is wrong. I see it as a sign that something powerful is being born. The spiritual function of the obstacle. Think about this. An oak tree doesn't grow strong in sunny days. It strengthens in storms. Its roots dig deeper when the wind threatens to rip it from the earth, and so does your character. Every blow you face, every disappointment, every moment when everything seems to fall apart, is an opportunity for your roots to grow deeper, for your soul to align more firmly with your purpose. The most successful men and women I've met have one thing in common. They've made peace with pain. They've learned to work with it, not against it. They don't seek it. But when it comes, they don't run from it. They face it. They walk through it. And then they transform it into strength, into clarity, into vision. I've seen how a financial collapse gave a man the chance to rebuild himself with truth. I've seen how a woman's rejection drove a man to become a best-selling author. I've seen how illness led a young woman to discover her purpose of healing others. Do you understand what I'm telling you? Resistance didn't come to destroy you. It came to reveal what you're made of, how to use resistance as creative energy. Stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What is this trying to prepare me for?" Every negative event hides an instruction. Your task is not to resist it. Your task is to decode its message. Turn every fall into a story worth telling. Leaders don't inspire with their achievements. They inspire with the battles they've overcome. You won't be remembered for never falling. You'll be remembered for how you got back up. Train your mind to give thanks in the middle of hardship. This isn't easy, but it's powerful. Be thankful for the delay. Be thankful for the failure. Be thankful for the enemy. Each one of them is serving a purpose, to awaken a strength inside you that you haven't used yet. The inner alchemy, turning the blow into purpose. When I began to teach this law, many resisted. They told me, "Hill, that sounds nice, but real pain doesn't transform so easily," and I would reply with what I know from experience. Pain, when processed with awareness, becomes wisdom. And applied wisdom is the most powerful tool for success. You can cry today. You may be in crisis. You may feel alone. But if you stop and observe, if you take that pain and hold it in your hands like clay, you can mold it into something others will want to hold. A vision, a mission, a creation. So I tell you this with all the fire of my soul. Don't curse the resistance. Embrace its presence, because if you know how to use it, it will make you unstoppable. The mediocre retreat from it. The great use it as a springboard. You decide who you'll be. And before I close this part, I want to leave you with a clear image. A sword is not forged in petals or silk. It is forged in fire, in hammer, in strike. And you, if you are willing, are being forged right now. Not as punishment, but because your purpose demands strength, and that strength isn't inherited. It is earned in the battles no one sees. When I finally understood that my growth didn't depend solely on what I knew, but on who I chose to walk with, a new dimension of success unfolded before me. It wasn't an instant revelation. It came after years of observing the most influential men I had ever met. Each one, without exception, had a circle of minds that challenged him, pushed him, sharpened him. They weren't flatterers. They were sculptors of character. Men and women whose very presence demanded clearer thinking, bolder action, and a life lived with greater purpose. For too long, I was a victim of an illusion, the belief that the journey had to be taken alone, that absolute independence was a mark of strength. But I soon learned that there's a difference between independence and isolation. The first gives you structure. The second eats you from within. What I discovered and now give to you is that the right alliances not only propel you forward, but awaken dormant parts of you, hidden talents, visions you never could have imagined on your own. There are people whose gaze can reconfigure your path, whose words can shatter a lie you've been repeating to yourself for years. People who see in you something you can't yet see, and who speak it with such conviction that you're forced to believe it. But there's something deeper. It's not just about who you choose. It's about who you are when those people arrive, because no one will give you access to their mind if yours isn't vibrating on the same frequency. And here lies one of the hardest truths I've learned. If you want elevated connections, you must elevate yourself first. You can't attract giants if you're still walking with the mindset of a spiritual beggar. Your standard must rise. Your language, your habits, your decisions, your time management, your way of treating others. All of it creates the field from which meaningful connection is either born or blocked. And I want you to understand this. Not everyone who stands by your side today is meant to walk with you to the highest levels. Some were useful for a season. Others were teachers through pain. But there comes a moment when you must close cycles, not with resentment but with gratitude. Because if you insist on maintaining relationships that no longer nourish your growth, you'll end up paying for it with your own energy. I had to learn that through pain. I had to let go of ties that were familiar, comfortable, even emotional. Because when I looked at the fruit, I saw they were weakening me. People who only knew how to complain, who were trapped in criticism, who called me a dreamer as if it were an insult. When I walked away, I didn't just find peace, I found focus. And with focus, I began to grow again. It was then that I understood. The quality of the people you interact with defines the quality of your vision. And I'm not just talking about business partners or mentors. I'm talking about daily conversations, about the messages you consume, the opinions you allow into your consciousness, the environments you frequent. All of that shapes you. All of that is part of the invisible design of your reality. And if you don't choose it with intention, someone else will choose it for you. Now listen carefully. Elevated connection is not always immediate. Sometimes it requires patience. Sometimes it demands you walk alone for a while so you learn how to stand on your own, so you don't place your emotional need on the table and end up begging for validation. The right alliances come when you no longer need them to fill a void, but to expand a vision. That's the difference between seeking support and attracting power. When you know who you are, when you no longer look to be saved, but to be accompanied, the universe responds. And it does so with surgical precision. Someone appears with the exact word. An unexpected conversation lifts you to a new level. A door opens without you forcing it. All of that happens when your frequency aligns with your purpose. And when it does, honor those connections, guard them, protect them from noise, from haste, from superficiality, because some alliances only flourish in depth. Don't connect from interest. Connect from truth, from authenticity, from pure intention. That's what allows a relationship to become a multiplier of purpose. It's not about having many contacts. It's about building a spiritual, emotional, and intellectual ecosystem that holds you on days of doubt and celebrates you on days of triumph. Believe me, there is no greater wealth than being surrounded by people who remind you of your greatness when the world tries to convince you otherwise. People who don't compete with you but amplify you, who don't hold you back but set you free. And most importantly, people with whom you don't have to pretend, with whom you can be vulnerable, real, raw, human. That's the kind of connection that transforms not only your path, but your being. And if you don't have those people yet, start by becoming one. Be the one who lifts others up. Be the one who listens without judgment, who speaks with vision, who builds without hidden agendas. Because when you become that kind of presence, you begin to attract similar ones. That's how the law works. What you give returns. And when you give greatness from your essence, that greatness returns multiplied in the form of people, opportunities, and moments you could never have planned. And that's where the journey becomes sacred. Because you no longer walk alone, you walk with others who carry the same fire. And that fire, when shared among aligned minds, becomes an unstoppable flame, a creative force, a legacy. Now that you know this, you are ready for what comes next. Because once you've built your power network, your circle of expansion, your environment of growth, it's time to face the greatest saboteur of all, your own mind. Not external enemies, not the world's challenges, but that inner voice that sometimes whispers doubt, fear, resignation, right when you're about to cross the threshold of the extraordinary. And for that, you must master inner silence. The art of ruling yourself. The power to lead your thoughts before they lead you. I always believed that the most formidable enemies I would face on my path were out there, in the structures of the world, in competition, in criticism. But I was wrong. It wasn't until I sat in absolute silence, without external noise, without urgent tasks, without anyone speaking to me, that I discovered the true force that could destroy me. My own undisciplined thoughts. I say this without drama and with complete certainty. If you do not govern your mind, it will govern you. And it will do so with a cruelty that doesn't need to scream. It will come in the form of doubt, procrastination, reasonable excuses. It will disguise itself as logic, caution, common sense. But beneath that disguise hides a force that has buried more dreams than any external tragedy. Your mind is fertile ground. Whatever you plant in it grows. But it can also be a chaotic field if you don't learn to cultivate it. For years, I allowed thoughts of defeat to take root inside me, not because I wanted to lose, but because I didn't know I could replace them. I didn't understand that every thought you tolerate becomes a silent architect of your destiny, and those thoughts don't disappear by ignoring them. They transform into habits, into ways of speaking, into emotional reactions, into small decisions, that over time lead you down paths that eventually feel inevitable. But they're not. They never were. They were simply choices made from an unguarded mental state. That's when I began working with the most powerful tool every human possesses, the conscious direction of thought. I'm not talking about superficial positive thinking or repeating empty phrases, hoping for magic. I'm talking about training the mind like a muscle, about identifying patterns, questioning them, and replacing them, about writing every day with a firm hand the ideas I wanted to plant in my consciousness. About observing my reactions and asking myself, does this belong to me, or is it an inherited idea from someone who never knew what inner freedom meant? Once I understood this, I realized that it's not enough to desire something. You must reconfigure the mental structure that will sustain that desire. If you want wealth, you must think like someone worthy of wealth. If you desire deep love, you must leave behind the thoughts that make you feel unworthy of it. If you long for purpose, you must break free from the beliefs that convince you you're lost. And that work is silent. It's private. No one sees it. But everyone notices it over time. Because when your mind changes, your language changes. And when your language changes, your world transforms. I remember entire nights when I would sit alone with nothing but a candle and a notebook, and I would force myself to write over and over what I wanted to see in me. I would speak out loud to myself what wasn't yet true, but that I refused to keep denying. I wrote to myself as if I had already won, not out of self-deception, but as a form of training, because I understood that if I repeated something long enough from the soul, my subconscious would eventually accept it. And once your subconscious accepts an idea, reality bows to it. This wasn't theory. It was raw practice. I watched myself with brutal honesty. I caught myself in every thought of complaint, limitation, fear. And instead of judging myself, I corrected myself, like a firm but loving father. I spoke to myself clearly. That's not who you are, that's what you learned, and what is learned can be unlearned. That was the mantra. Every day, one step. Every day, one new word. Every day, one better planted thought than the day before. That's how a life is changed. The most revealing thing was this. The more mastery I gained over my mind, the freer I felt, because I no longer reacted, I chose. I no longer repeated the past, I redesigned the present. And in doing so, the future began to bend in my favor, as if the universe recognized my authority over myself. Because that's what truly moves the world. The ability of a human being to govern themselves with purpose, to live from the inside out, to own their inner state, no matter what happens on the outside. People often ask me how to know if you're on the right path. The answer is simple. Observe your internal dialogue. If that dialogue empowers you, even if the world doesn't reflect it yet, you are planting well. If that dialogue limits you, even if everything on the outside seems to be progressing, you are in danger. It doesn't matter how great your vision is. If your mind secretly sabotages it, you'll never see it come true. That's why I insist. Before conquering the world, conquer your inner world. Before achieving success out there, create clarity in here. And do it every day, not when you feel like it, not when you have spare time. Do it as if your life depends on it, because it does. And when you master this, when you learn to control your focus, your emotional state, your inner narrative, something extraordinary happens. The decisions that used to be hard now flow. The opportunities you once ignored now leap before your eyes. The relationships you once sabotaged now transform. Because you are no longer reactive, you are proactive. You are no longer at the mercy of your impulses. You are the conductor of your energy. And that, dear listener, is not magic. It is mastery. It is sustained inner work. It is discipline applied with tenderness toward yourself. And once you reach that state, then you're ready for the next step, aligned action. Not just any action, not action out of desperation, but the kind that is born from inner clarity. Because when your mind is an ally to your purpose, your movement has power. Every word, every gesture, every decision becomes intentional. And that, more than any external strategy, is what opens doors where there were once only walls. I always believed that the most formidable enemies I would encounter on my path were out there, in the structures of the world, in competition, in criticism. But I was wrong. It wasn't until I sat in absolute silence, with no external noise, no urgent tasks, no one speaking to me, that I discovered the true force capable of destroying me, my own untamed thoughts. I say this without dramatics and with absolute certainty. If you don't govern your mind, it will govern you. And it will do so with a cruelty that doesn't need to shout. It will come as doubt, procrastination, reasonable excuses. It will wear the disguise of logic, prudence, and common sense. But beneath that disguise hides a force that has buried more dreams than any external tragedy. Your mind is fertile soil. Whatever you plant will grow. But it is also chaotic terrain if you don't learn to cultivate it. For years, I allowed thoughts of defeat to settle inside me. Not because I wanted to lose, but because I didn't know I could replace them. I didn't understand that every thought you tolerate becomes a silent architect of your destiny, and those thoughts don't vanish by ignoring them. They transform into habits, into ways of speaking, into emotional reactions, into small decisions that, when accumulated, lead you down paths that later seem inevitable. But they are not. They never were. They were merely decisions made from an unguarded state of mind. That's when I began to work with the most powerful tool every human being possesses, the conscious direction of thought. I'm not talking about superficial positive thinking or repeating empty phrases hoping that magic will happen. I'm talking about training the mind the way you train a muscle. I'm talking about identifying patterns, questioning them, and replacing them. I'm talking about writing down every day with a firm hand the ideas I want to plant in my consciousness. I'm talking about observing my reactions and asking myself, does this truly belong to me, or is it an inherited idea from someone who never knew what inner freedom was? Once I understood this, I realized that wanting something is not enough. You have to reconfigure the mental structure that can support that desire. If you want wealth, you must think like someone worthy of wealth. If you seek deep love, you must let go of the thoughts that make you feel undeserving of it. If you long for purpose, you must free yourself from the beliefs that convince you that you're lost. And that work is silent. It's private, no one sees it, but everyone notices it over time. Because when your mind changes, your language changes, and when your language changes, your world changes. I remember entire nights when I would sit alone with nothing but a candle and a notebook, and I would force myself to write again and again what I wanted to see in myself. I would say to myself out loud things that weren't yet true, but I refused to keep denying them. I wrote to myself as if I had already overcome, not out of self-deception, but out of training, because I understood that if I repeated something often enough from the soul, my subconscious would eventually accept it. And when your subconscious accepts an idea, reality surrenders to it. This wasn't theory, it was raw practice. I watched myself with brutal honesty. I caught myself in every thought of complaint, of limitation, of fear. And instead of judging myself, I corrected myself, like a firm but loving father. I spoke to myself with clarity. That's not who you are, that's what you learned. And what is learned can be unlearned. That was the mantra. Each day, a step. Each day, a new word. Each day, a thought better planted than the one before. That's how a life is changed. The most revealing part was this. The more mastery I gained over my mind, the freer I felt. Because I no longer reacted. I chose. I no longer repeated the past. I redesigned the present. And by doing so, the future began to bow before me, as if the universe recognized my authority over myself. Because that's what truly moves the world. The ability of a human being to govern themselves with purpose, to live from the inside out, to own their internal state no matter what happens outside. Sometimes people ask me how to know if you're on the right path. The answer is simple. Listen to your inner dialogue. If that dialogue empowers you, even if the world hasn't yet reflected it, you are planting well. If that dialogue limits you, even if everything outside seems to be progressing, you are in danger. It doesn't matter how great your vision is. If your mind sabotages it in secret, you will never see it become real. That's why I insist. Before conquering the world, conquer your inner world. Before succeeding out there, create clarity in here. And do it every day, not just when you feel like it, not just when you have time to spare. Do it as if your life depended on it, because it does. And when you achieve that, when you learn to master your focus, your emotional state, your inner narrative, something extraordinary happens. The decisions that once felt hard now flow. The opportunities you once ignored now leap into view. The relationships you once sabotaged now transform. Because you are no longer reactive, you are proactive, no longer at the mercy of your impulses. You are the conductor of your energy. And that, dear listener, is not magic, it is mastery. It is sustained inner work. It is discipline applied with tenderness toward oneself. And once you reach that state, then you're ready for the next step. Aligned action, not just any action, not action born of desperation, but action born of inner clarity. Because when your mind becomes an ally to your purpose, your movement has power. Every word, every gesture, every decision becomes intentional. And that, more than any external strategy, is what opens doors where there once were only walls.